going to talk about conversations
All
and
right.
communication.
So, talk about talking. Um, so, do you want to? Well, I guess you want to do any like recent news? Does that worth? Or is that too much of a
Oh,
deviation?
no, we can do some recent news. Let me look up and see what we can find. That's fun. I mean, other than the cold snap that was supposed to take out everything, but didn't.
I don't know. New York got buried.
Well, this is true, but Texas didn't. So we were supposed to get hit too. So let's see if there's anything fun. Mummies with golden tongues.
What?
Yeah, news at 11. Right.
Okay.
Best archaeology discoveries of 2022, including spooky City of the Dead find. As the new year approaches, the sun looks back at some of the most incredible archaeological discoveries of 2022. Oh, that reminds me of an incredible discovery I heard about. We'll talk about that in a minute. Rare ancient Egyptian faces. Earlier this December, the portraits of two mummies were uncovered. Uh, According to the Egyptian government, they made the discovery at the Gerza excavation site in Fayum, Egypt, around 70 miles southwest of Cairo. The two full-color artworks, known as the Fayum portraits, are the first of their kind to be discovered in over a century. Doo, doo, doo. You know what? Let me share my screen so that poor people watching can actually enjoy this beautiful thing that I have found. So yeah, there's our rare Egyptian faces. Apparently, this is what they looked like. That's actually pretty good artwork.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it.
You're not seeing it on? Oh, because I actually have to select the screen and hit share. Okay.
What? What? What madness is this?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Good. I mean, they're giving the Renaissance men a run for their money.
Yeah. Yeah. Did they
Kind
say
of reminds me of iconography, but
what
yeah.
time does it come from?
Supposedly, there are two mummies. Doesn't really say. So I don't know.
There's a notice to update your phone. Better
Yeah,
make sure.
I know. All right, so
So,
there's a pink
not the point of the
sarcophagus.
call.
No, not really. Pink sarcophagus from the City of the Dead, which is interesting. So, yeah. The granite coffin is said to have belonged to a prominent politician. Are we
Oh,
sure
so
that's
it's
a.
full of. Oh wait.
Yes, full of manure? Yes, indeed. Golden mummy tongues. All right, so they uncovered ancient mummies with golden tongues. I don't know if they dipped the tongues in gold before or after they died. So hey.
Oh. Yeah. Um.
Oldest African dinosaur fossils were found in Zimbabwe.
I think I saw this
The
one.
research was published in the journal Nature that same week.
I think it's the oldest. Basically, it's the oldest confirmed one because they've got Nyasasaurus, which is in the same area. Not Zimbabwe directly, but um,
Oh,
named
but we're
after
going to
Lake
go to a
Nyasa.
really fun thing. I'm going to look this up on YouTube. Um, because they think they've identified where the city of Atlantis is. It's in the Sahara Desert. Yeah, so let's go here. So see this this city right here. They have
That's
uncovered under the sands of the Sahara, and they found recently a map that they could accurately date that indicates a location similar to where this is found. So it's known as the Reshat structure, or the Eye of the Sahara.
Mm-hmm.
But the map, see, this is what Plato's description of the city of Atlantis was. It was rings of concentric circles with water in between, waterways in between. And it was destroyed in a single day and night of misfortune and sank beneath the waves. But what they looked at from the satellite was that basically it looks like a tsunami smacked the coast nearby and pushed a wall of debris over the top of the city. Which ended up with the Sahara basically being torched. So, yep, this is what they found. And there's you can go and find several videos on it. It's really cool information. So that would be very interesting if it actually is in the western portion of the Sahara Desert.
I'd seen something about an eye there, like eye-looking kind of structure. I hadn't seen like write-ups on exactly what they had found. I'm gonna be cautious because while I do think something is there, give 2 big points of caution. One is, even professionals get excited.
Well, no, this is actually more recently. I know that there's a lot of things that can come undone, but
well, I mean, our hip shot analysis can be altered, altered. I don't know, flawed.
Yes.
As we've talked about many times, based on our own bias, and the other one is that the story of Atlantis to begin with is, if I remember correctly, it's Plato was retelling it based on stuff he had either read about. I think he read.
It was based on something he was told by an Egyptian priest.
Right.
Now,
something
remember
that happened
though
a long
that at the
time before.
At the time that Plato lived, the Library of Alexandria was still alive and well.
Right.
So an Egyptian being able to tell him about events that happened long before he was born, not implausible at all.
Oh, and this is the inherent problem with the story of Atlantis, though, is it's still at best third-hand knowledge to begin with. So even if you find an amazing city from from a civilization that had existed, you could never directly prove that.
Actually, yes, you can. That's what my point was. They didn't just find what looks like the city of Atlantis. They had a map from before, but they couldn't verify what date belonged to it. They couldn't authenticate it. And it seemed to indicate that this was Atlantis based on that map. The new map that they have recently found does identify that location as being where Atlantis was.
Well, let's go back and let's look up the story of Atlantis to begin with, because I think the location is also open to interpretation.
Let's see. Well, let's find. Obviously.
I mean, I don't want to. I mean, they may have found something really freaking cool. I don't want that to get in the way of a good
Of course you do.
Of that. It's really just when you're going back and see. Story.
Yeah, let's see. So Plato told the story of Atlantis around 360. Come on, stop it. National Geographic, you jerks. I don't really want to subscribe to you, but I will for the sake of the story. You annoy me. Anyway, all right, so Plato told the story of Atlantis around 360 BC. The founders were half god and half human, according to him. Whether or not that's true, who knows. They created a utopian civilization and became a great naval power. Their home was made up of concentric islands separated by wide moats and linked by a canal that penetrated to the center. The lush islands, which they do know that the Sahara was once a lush paradise. It was not the desert we know. The lush islands contained gold, silver, and other precious metals and supported an abundance of rare exotic wildlife, which, by the way, they have found an abundance of ivory and gold in that city as they're excavating. There was a great capital city on the central island. There are many theories about where Atlantis was.
Wait, what was the location that was described?
It actually doesn't.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Is I think
there are many theories about where Atlantis was. No, this is why I'm saying that they have found a map that was from Rome that does pinpoint the location that they could verify the dating on, which they had one before that, which indicated that this was the location, but they couldn't verify the dating. There's a whole YouTube video about it, which is really cool. The guy did his homework quite well. But I don't want to plagiarize somebody else's work. I'll leave you to go search it on YouTube. But yeah, so
I'm just saying that the story is the story of Atlantis is talked about like so much, right? But the details,
sure.
The details
are sure.
Well, the details are still scant, and so even if there was, regardless of whether there were, so let's say Plato's talking to someone, right? What are they telling him, and what information is he transcribing or writing down versus from his own point of view of what he hears.
Well, I hear what you're saying, Kevin. I hear what you're saying. But okay, so we have a brief description. It was a city of concentric circles located in a lush area with lots of ivory, lots of gold, waterways in between, and a canal that linked up, a main capital city on the center island. So all of those factors would need to be involved in order for it to be identified as Atlantis if it matched up, right? And then on top of that, you would need authenticating data from the time period, which, like I said, they have found something that seems to authenticate it, which is why it's so exciting. And the city they found in the eye of the Sahara that they found in the Sahara Desert, which is actually a, kind of a redundancy because Sahara means desert, matches that description.
Let's see.
Here, I'll put it in chat.
Plato's vague indications of the time. This is Wikipedia.
Well, yeah, Wikipedia. So.
Right. Well, Plato's vague indications of the time of events more than 9,000 years before his time, and the alleged location of Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Hercules gave rise to much speculation. As a consequence, Atlantis has become a byword for. Anyways, basically.
Yes, here's the one that. Look, when we get it, I will put the link in chat, and you can look at it at your leisure.
Again, I don't want to poo-poo on what could be a great find. I'm just saying that the story that we get from Plato is.
Well, I know. I understand what you're saying. Yeah. I understand what you're saying. We're not saying this is fact. It is not proven yet. It is being slowly substantiated, but not proven.
So that goes into private chat here.
Yeah.
Does this? If I type this, yeah, here we go. Here's the. Can't post messages to some channels. Okay, we'll see. Anyways, that one, if it allows to go up, then.
So anyway, so that's what we found. That was kind of interesting. I thought I'd bring that up because it's fascinating to me.
I think any find of an old city helps put together more pieces.
If it is actually Atlantis, and you have to think about it, they estimate that Atlantis was destroyed in approximately 11,000 BC. if it is the city of Atlantis, and it was a main capital city for a lot of territory, then you have to imagine if they can dig through and find a library, for example, all kinds of historical information might be buried under there.
Right.
So
that would be fantastic.
mhm.
Assuming there's much in the way of paper, I don't know how well papyrus.
Well, no, I mean they would
preserves.
write on tablets and papyrus, so it's not necessarily. The clay tablets are the most likely to have survived.
Yeah, so it had to have been before the Bronze Age.
Well, it might totally redefine what we know about history, or what we think we know.
Yeah, and I think that's continually evolving. What we know of our history, parts of it will go further back. Parts of it will prove to be misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
Always good to. Yeah, I want to see. I'll read more about that article later.
Yeah.
So
okay.
that would be fantastic if we found more, like, because as the Sahara had spread,
Mhm.
becomes kind of like its own barrier. Well, it becomes its own barrier.
Yeah.
In large parts between civilizations, and so there's a disconnect from, and I'm sure there was some.
Oh dear.
What?
Earlier this month, researchers discovered the remains of a small mammal in the fossils of a microraptor that has some. This new discovery shed light on their diet. Oh, great.
Well, getting to find something
mammals.
that has been eaten and partially digested, preserved, is fantastic.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
These finds are the only solid evidence we have about the food consumption of these long extinct animals, and they're exceptionally rare. So very exciting. We now know what they ate for dinner.
At least once.
But did they like it? That's the real question. Was it to their satisfaction? Did they serve anything well?
Right. So I guess the
And the question is, was it rare or medium rare?
Oh. Was it mammal or mammal-like?
Yeah, exactly.
I guess this is a good segue into the communication.
Yes.
Like, because we have to. This could have gone. The conversation about Atlantis or a potential city that could have been the mythical Atlantis, and whether Atlantis is mythical, is very different based on our understanding. Right? We already both understand at least most, the large concepts of Atlantis. There's details I'd have to go back and read exactly what Plato said, right? And then, but we come to a partial disconnect where we say, well, one of us is kind of are going from the, well, maybe we could never know that there was ever a real Atlantis because what Plato's describing is too vague, and he's getting that, from he's getting it from someone who didn't live at the time, and it's being retold, and so no matter what we find, maybe we can never actually truly prove that this Atlantis existed, just an idea of it,
unless they have a label on the city.
Or unless they have a label
that says Atlantis.
Yeah.
Which is possible. It is conceivable.
Well,
or maybe we'll find a signpost that says this way to Atlantis.
Right. And maybe he wrote it down wrong. It was originally pronounced Cheerios, and he just mistranslated it.
No.
I don't know.
Yeah, here's what's actually written, and it's in the book Timaeus and Critias by Plato. So this power came forth out of the Atlantic Ocean, for in those days the Atlantic was navigable, and there was an island situated in front of the straits, which are by you called the Pillars of Hercules. The island was larger than Libya and Asia put together, and was the way to the other islands. And from these you might pass to the whole of the opposite continent, which surrounded the true ocean. For the sea which is within the Straits of Hercules is only a harbor, having a narrow entrance, but the other is a real sea, and the surrounding land may be most truly called a boundless continent. So now in this island of Atlantis there was a great and wonderful empire which had rule over the whole island and several others and other parts of the continent. And furthermore, the men of Atlantis had subjected the parts of Libya within the columns of Hercules as far as Egypt, and of Europe as far as Tyrrhenia. The vast power, gathered into one, endeavored to subdue at a blow our country and yours and the whole of the region within the straits, and then Solon, your country shone forth in the excellence of her virtue and strength among all mankind. She was preeminent in courage and military skill, and was the leader of the Hellenes. And when the rest fell off from her, being compelled to stand alone after having undergone the very extremity of danger, she defeated and triumphed over the invaders, and preserved from slavery those who were not yet subjugated, and generously liberated all the rest of us who dwell within the pillars. But afterwards there occurred violent earthquakes and floods, and in a single day and night of misfortune all your warlike men in a body sank into the earth, and the island of Atlantis in like manner disappeared in the depths of the sea, for which reason the sea in those parts is impassable and impenetrable, because there's a shoal of mud in the way, and this was caused by the subsidence of the island. So basically, it talks about a natural disaster having come over it. And you'll be interested when you see the YouTube video. I think you'll find that fascinating.
So it's interesting to note that that pretty much all cultures have at some point had a flood kind of
yes,
flood
and
event,
Greece
right?
actually has its own flood narrative.
Right.
And Rome did too. Rome borrowed everybody's culture. Rome did what America does, which is Rome would take a culture, take it out back, beat it up, and go through its pockets for loose artifacts that it could adopt and integrate into its own. So,
you know,
and that's what America does too. We take you out back, we beat you up, we go through your pockets looking for loose verbs and things we can integrate into our culture that are useful.
I think at a certain point Rome became this is you can plenty of evidence. Rome becomes so the idea of Rome becomes so prevalent that people believe that they're in the empire. Even when Rome falls, the Visigoths and the people in the area, they're still looking at the empire as having continued. Just okay, so the leadership in Rome hasn't continued, but that's okay. The empire continues because the idea does, right? That was just the political union, and I think so. But yeah, it kind of, to begin with, Rome kind of had a real good reason to be like fighting. They just kind of kept continuing, all in the name of security. So we've advanced under your borders, but now you scare us.
When you're a small civilization, right, trying to strike out among bigger civilizations, you have to fight for survival, right? I mean, that's the only way you're going to stay free. It's kind of like Rome had the Napoleon complex before Napoleon was born, and and they never outgrew it. They went from they had small man syndrome because they were the smallest, and then they grew bigger and bigger and bigger and never outgrew their small man syndrome.
Right. But
the need to prove themselves bigger and better.
Yeah. So now I'm distracting. Okay. So yes, America. Yes, we borrow from cultures all around the world.
Of course we do. We're not prejudiced. We hate everybody equally. No, just kidding.
We love that idea. Thank you.
Exactly. We love that idea. That's a fantastic idea. It's our idea now. We're just going to take it and improve on it. Thank you.
I think it's okay. So back on the So where are we going from the flood myth is prevalent pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, but this isn't a flood myth. This is not the same as a flood myth, because the flood myth is part of, like I said, it's part of Greek and Roman culture. It actually, they had a specific. This is not part of that narrative, though. This is independent of that. This is um, natural disaster-ish, but not specific to a flood.
Okay,
I mean, it's talking about earthquakes. It's talking about a lot of things.
let me use a different word. Mythos, right? People develop stories around things, and then the original events that may have been being talked about are kind of lost in the whole story. You have your
Possibly,
right?
possibly. And I know, I get it. You don't believe, so that's okay. You're not required to believe.
Oh yeah, but it's I do believe flooding happened.
No, I'm not. This is not a flood, though. You're kind of like twisting the statement. It's not a flood. It's talking about an earthquake and then a natural disaster, which is not a flood per se. There was water involved, but it's a city. It talks about being sunk underneath the waves and actually going back, you'll watch in the video, he talks about the fact that there's salt from the sea having been found in the center of this eye of Sahara. So there's evidence that there was, in fact, the sea did cover it for a while and then receded, which would make sense if the tsunami comes and there's water that covers over it and then washes back out.
Right. Now, to the people of that, many of them would have seen flooding, right? Oh.
You're stuck on the whole flood thing.
Just
You're obsessed with the whole flood thing. You need to stop with the flood thing.
Oh. Well, I'm not. I'm just talking through where does the story originate? Or where does the person in Egypt get the story? It's told about another civilization that had come there, right?
Actually, it's part of, I think, it would be like me talking about Mexico. I live in the United States, but I know that Mexico exists.
Right.
Okay. And maybe it no longer exists because, something has taken over it, but I can remember when it existed, or I have records of when it existed.
Right.
So I'm telling you about the story about that culture. Right. I guess it would be equivalent of somebody from America telling people about the Mayan civilization.
That's going to get butchered.
Well, okay, but no, I'm just saying, we know for a fact that there was a Mayan civilization.
Yes.
Okay, so this is that guy from Egypt telling Plato about a civilization that existed that now no longer exists.
Right. Yeah. So anyways, this is where I don't know.
I'm just saying, it's not that hard to believe that the guy was accurate because they did have records. He lived in Egypt. They had the Library of Alexandria, which had records from all over the world about all kinds of things. If the guy was a priest, he would have had direct access to that library. He probably would have been involved with that library, with upkeeping the library.
Right. Oh.
So.
But okay. So let's go back to let's not trying to be pedantic and just annoying on details. But the point that we were going on about is about communication breakdown, and because those fundamental details still have to be agreed upon.
You can have many communication breakdowns. I mean, the details of what you say can be taken and turned away. For instance, it's the game of telephone, right? How accurately do I remember what you told me, and how accurately do I convey it to somebody else?
Right. And then what is my perception on that, right?
And is there any bias that I may have? Is there any particular reason that I may have to elevate some details above others?
We can talk about so in Texas, almost 2 years ago, there was a big freeze that comes by, lasts about a week, right? And then
10 days. 10
days. Okay. See, I'm already I'm slipping bad. It's the sands of time running through my fingers.
Well, when you get old.
Well, eventually it'll be just 3 days. Come on, we dealt with these things before. I don't know, whatever. It could be a month and a half. Oh, we
It
shouldered
was a
this.
3-hour tour. I don't know.
And I was walking uphill both ways, barefoot in it. So, um, but so we could talk about what is the real cause of the crisis to most people? Is it the ice? The storm that happens. Is the government preparedness? Is it infrastructure? Is it this and that? Right. So what I'm telling you about the story is also, and that's from here in Texas. We can have multiple viewpoints. If you're outside Texas, I guarantee your viewpoints are like less nuanced.
Well, yeah, if you're outside of Texas, your opinion is the whole problem was that Texas has its own grid and isn't part of somebody else's grid,
Oh
and our grid
yeah,
wasn't prepared to handle it.
right.
Which, never mind the fact that their grid regularly goes down and leaves them stranded, and they are better prepared for such cold temperatures than we are. So, all things considered, Texas did not perfectly, but fairly well.
Right. So if I'm in Egypt telling this, not from Egypt, so I'm just
Are
hypothetically
you
saying,
sure?
if I were like there, I would be telling a story about a fantastic
Look,
civilization that had come
here's
there.
the answer. Ancient
Yeah.
astronaut theorists say yes.
Yes. Okay, it is Atlantis. You're right. We're done.
Ancient astronaut theorists say yes. That is all you need to know.
Where's a megalith? I need to sacrifice him.
Well, see, I personally find that if I'm a politician, I want ancient astronaut theorists to vote for me because I rarely have them say no to anything.
So,
should she be elected as president, ancient astronaut theorists say yes.
That's a platform.
I can actually put together a political campaign ad with clips of ancient astronaut theorists say yes.
Are you voting against this? Are you sure that I'm wrong?
Look,
all the ancient astronaut theorists say that I'm right.
Exactly. Look, I have polled the ancient astronaut theorists and they say yes.
So,
they're better than a magic 8-ball. At least you know which answer you're going to get.
Excuse me. I'm sure there's plenty of. Okay, so hold on. Let me keep a cohesive thought together. Maybe I shouldn't have had the extra coffee. So on communicating, though, we still have to agree on certain things. We already have some understanding that we've agreed upon to have the conversation, because you didn't need to describe to me Atlantis. We've already right. We've agreed on Atlantis, right?
We've agreed that there was a claim of the existence of an advanced civilization.
Mm-hmm.
Pardon me. That was called a city called Atlantis. That is no more.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know where it was, but it was. Now it's not. Those are the things we know. We know that Plato was the one who recorded about it, and it's the only surviving record we have about it, and that's our source of the original information.
So it wouldn't be a very productive conversation to talk about like this city being Atlantis and how, what that means, if someone's dragging back the conversation, arguing about the existence of Atlantis in the first place.
Yes, if they are just saying basically it never really existed, it was something Plato made up, that's not a helpful, that can't contribute to the conversation about Atlantis's location.
All right, it would be a detraction
it's
from
that. It's a different conversation.
Right. And I think what we talked about before, not on video, but was that is one of the problems that we have on social media. Everyone can go like, "Oh my God, social media is terrible," but we're able to contact friends. We can, at any time.
Social media has its benefits.
Right.
It does.
But I think the problem that happens many times that that I'm dropped into the middle of a conversation that I don't know is happening. I see a conversation in a thread. Let's say I'm on my feed. Let's say I'm on Twitter, and here's a comment, and to me, responding to that seems justified. It's saying like I'm seeing, and I have no context of another conversation, but I may not even have realized that there's a full conversation happening, and this is comment number 30. And so, out of context, I'm like, oh, well, actually, it's this. Let me not trying to be rude at all. Maybe I'm trying to like, oh, well, I have my own thoughts on that. But in context to the full thread, completely like now
Completely off topic, and now you look like a troll.
all right, and multiple people jump in and go, "You monster!" What? Right? This is this
No,
right?
they just,
So
they call you a troll, or they want to block you out of the conversation because, well, you're not really contributing to it.
right, and whew. And so I say that there's this is something that we need to solve to for whatever the next version of the reinvention of social media. It's one of the technologies that this version of social media as we've come to know it um, needs to change because it can be this is one of the ways in which it can be divisive
Mm-hmm.
because we can't if we're trying to have a constructive conversation advancing if, let's say we've agreed upon um, the upon something and we're trying to advance the conversation in that way and then someone comes along and what we've agreed to they're like completely against. I'm like, no, it's not true, it's not exist. Well, now our conversation has to pivot to answer to this person that has come along and determinedly going, no, the entire basis of your conversation is wrong. um so there's times we need to be more open in our discussions so we can be open, open in our thinking, invite new opinion, have an open discussion and discuss more broad topics. And the times we just need to be more exclusive. How do we, what tools would we need to be able to do that? And I don't think social media I'm not saying it's an easy problem to solve, it's complex problems, but um like
Yeah, because when you're having an open conversation, you can't guarantee at what point in time somebody's going to enter the conversation. And they may have lost the proper context because they entered at the wrong point in the conversation.
right.
It's kind of like if you and I have been discussing the city of Atlantis, right? And we're
Hmm.
talking about the possible locations for it, and then somebody hears us talking about Egypt and comes in and starts on a total tangent about Egypt, which is not at all relevant to Atlantis.
Right.
So at that point in time, your conversation just takes a like 90-degree turn, and you're like, huh?
Yeah, exactly, and it can be very frustrating for all parties involved.
Right, because the person who comes into the middle of the conversation feels like they're being excluded or ignored or discounted. And the two people that started the conversation and were originally involved are frustrated because the original conversation is being derailed and distracted from.
Right.
So,
And
yeah, there does need to be a way to graciously enter a conversation that's already existing.
and um and then this can also be like there's conversations that let's say I yeah let's say I'm used to calling you a certain name, and but in general, like when I'm in public I call you something different, right? It wouldn't make sense to anybody else if I like to most people if I said this name. um what shows up on your screen? What shows up if you're taking a screenshot, especially if it's like I'm not saying that I don't know, just like friends like come up with like
Well, yeah, I mean, like
funny.
my son has a nickname that we call him, that we've always called him. But in business context, he goes by his first name. So those who know him in business context don't know about his family nickname. And so to hear us call him by his family nickname is a little bit jarring to them.
Like wait, what? And then what's the story behind that? Well, I don't need to have
Funny
that
story about that.
Yeah.
My husband's best friend, his actual name was Jeffrey Bryan, but I always knew him as Brian. That's all I knew him as. We got out in the work world. We ended up working at the same place together, and the boss called him by his formal name, Jeffrey. He looked at me and goes, "Why did he call you that? That's not your name." And he looks at me and goes, "Yeah, well, actually, it is." I'm like, okay, news at 11.
Yeah. Yeah, so a great example. Let's say that there was a reverend or a doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they wanted to just have a conversation without putting the title in,
Mm-hmm.
and so they're talking, and having that to like show up. They're like, "Wait, I don't, I don't need that to color how someone's going to talk to me."
In my estimation, in my experience, anybody with the title of doctor not only insists that they be used, but is very offended if you don't.
Actually, it was to case point. Talking to someone who was on a different video with me and Casey, and she's a doctor, but not a medical doctor.
Hmm.
And so she's like, "Well, I don't oftentimes, I don't always go by that because I'm not a medical doctor." And I'm like, "Why not? Just own it, right?" So, so we called her throughout. But yeah, so in those kind of cases for her, it's like, well, I don't want to give people the wrong impression, right? But
Yeah, that's where you would have to clarify what kind of doctor you are.
All
Like
right,
I'm a
so
doctor in biology or I'm a doctor in literature.
all right. And so in those kind of cases, I'm saying like if there's an evolution of social media, then it could be selective over what conversation, like the way that I address someone is in context. I don't know what kind of settings that could be and whatever. Um, but I don't know, just ideating. I don't know if I'm going off on.
No, I mean it's something that social media should, well, there'll probably eventually be ways to lock down a conversation thread and keep people informed about what it's really about so that the
Yeah,
context stays in place. Like anybody new gets the updated conversation summary, for instance, and reads through it before they jump in.
yeah, and it has to be by permission of the speakers involved
Right,
too.
exactly. So that all parties are okay. Look, you need to read the conversation summary before you jump in. And yes, we're okay with you jumping into the conversation. Or no, we're not. This is
Yeah,
kind of a yes, we're having it in the open, but it's kind of a closed discussion.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just like you and me going to the mall, we're having a private conversation. Yes, there are people around us, and yes, they can hear that conversation, but us having a conversation isn't an invitation for them to join.
yeah, screw you people at the mall. You're just you're rude and obnoxious and
Look, just because we were discussing how to hijack the jewelry store in your hearing doesn't mean we wanted you to participate in the conversation, all right?
um have you okay, so you've been playing with GPT chat.
Yeah, actually I have. It's very interesting what it can do and what it can't do. I find it fascinating that if you tell it you want 15 paragraphs of a chapter, and then you tell it what you want the chapter to be about, it can't seem to find an ending. It starts off okay. It can write 15 paragraphs, but it doesn't ever seem to end the paragraphs appropriately.
Each paragraph is not
No,
ended
no.
properly.
The last paragraph is always like a hanging sentence. It's
Oh,
not actually ending it. And it doesn't have a concept of a true beginning, middle, and ending. So there's
have
no
you
plot coherency,
have you
if that
requested
makes sense.
a complete one or
Yeah,
tried to
yeah,
like
yeah.
oh,
Several times over. It just can't seem to do it. Now, here's an interesting fun fact though. If you tell it to write a scene and you describe what should happen in the scene, it seems to be capable of doing that.
huh. This is version 3. The version 4 comes
Mm-hmm.
out sometime next year.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting to see what it can do and what it can't
Right.
do.
I'm really excited for I think one of the things that a tool like this can do, they want to monetize it sometime in the future. So So we'll have to see what that looks like. And it's right now it's really expensive compared to like Google search, for them to run each query. So they'll have to get the cost down. That'll happen easier with widespread adoption. And then, but I think one thing that it does is, this can massively accelerate training.
How so?
Um, so so we both have our areas of specialty, right? And as we know that the rule of thumb is, Google it, right? But if you don't know enough about the subject, you don't know what to Google.
Yes, actually, that has come up several times. That Googling is actually an art and a skill that you have to learn how to get the best results from Google.
I take that a step further. It's not just knowing the best way to Google, but about the subject. If I don't know what's missing in my knowledge, then I
Hmm.
don't even know there's a problem I don't even know the
Yeah.
beginning, right? I
Well,
don't,
and you don't know how to filter the results because you don't know what you're missing, so you don't know what you're looking for.
right.
It's kind of like if I get told go look for a car. Okay, great. Well, how do I filter all these results? What am I looking for exactly? You
Right.
know, why
And
am I
then
looking?
now let's take that a step, even if we were, going a step further, even as specialists, looking in areas that we know, um, but there's a feature we don't know about, or we're trying to, like, there's a new tool. Okay, cool. We're still needing to dig through a page of results, sometimes two, or go find extra sources, and then because anyone who's creating something for Google, um, is also trying to monetize that, or maybe they want to get more, or either monetize it or satisfy an algorithm, so they want to capture our attention. So let's take, um, a 15-20 minute video on a DIY on how to do something. Most of that video is not that useful. It's someone's opinion. They're trying to do things to keep me going, right? If I'm reading through something, I hope that I found the answer to what I'm looking for, but I don't know. I need to wade through more and more content. And this becomes a problem. I don't want to not to. I mean, I don't want to like make it bad on, on creators, but at the same time, for learning something, sometimes just I've being able to get like a f- here's some quick steps. This is exactly what you do to go do this one thing. Wow, right? So I looked up some stuff on writing ads, and how to write, write this, and it was able to very quickly spit it out. And then there was cases I asked it to go, um, write a script, not a verbal script, but Google Ads script. It's code, right? Um, and it just spat it out, and then it gave me a quick. This is how you insert it. This is how you put it in the ad account. Boom,
Hmm.
that right there. Then some people have been pointing that, yeah, you can get it to write emails. I'm not saying that everything it produces is going to be like, oh, just going to
No,
copy and
well,
paste
I'll
stuff.
give you an example. Okay, I'll read you. I typed into Chat GPT, tell me a story about the discovery of the lost city of Atlantis in the Eye of Sahara. Once upon a time, in a far off land, there was a great city known as Atlantis. It was said to be a place of great beauty and prosperity, with towering spires and gleaming streets of gold. For centuries, Atlantis remained hidden from the world, its location a closely guarded secret known only to a select few. But as time passed, rumors and legends of the lost city began to spread far and wide, tantalizing the imagination of adventurers and treasure hunters alike. One such adventurer was a young man named Jack who spent his entire life searching for the fabled city. He scoured every inch of the earth, following every lead and clue he could find, determined to be the one to finally uncover the truth about Atlantis. And so one day, Jack set out on his greatest adventure yet. He traveled to the Eye of Sahara, a vast desert region in the heart of Africa where many believed Atlantis was hidden. For weeks, Jack braved the scorching heat and treacherous sand dunes, searching for any sign of the lost city, and finally, after what seemed like an eternity, he came upon a strange structure rising up out of the desert sands. As he approached, he could see that it was a massive ancient city with towering walls and ornately carved buildings. It was clear that this was Atlantis, the lost city he had been seeking for so long. Overjoyed and triumphant, Jack rushed to explore the city, marveling at its beauty and wonder. He discovered that it was home to a highly advanced civilization with marvels of technology and engineering that he'd never even dreamt of. And so Jack remained in Atlantis, exploring its secrets and learning all that he could about the amazing place. And he knew he had truly found the greatest treasure of all, the discovery of the lost city of Atlantis. That's not a bad story.
Yeah, not bad at all. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. I wish I'd written it. No, just kidding.
So let's take the idea of how the training could be accelerated. So when I'm doing my job, or you, right?
Mhm.
There's not always like best case scenarios, right? Some of it's like, okay, this is my environment. I know what I'm doing. I just gotta think through some ideas. Cool, right? Yeah, you could use a tool to help accelerate some of this, give extra ideas, but then frequently there's instances in which you need to stop and you need to go do something else within to get that task done. So you can't complete the full task without the side task being done. And that side task is uh I'll have to figure that out. Dang it. Um Now we wade into one of the sticky points that kills our production, because now we could wade into what used to be a little bit easier. Googling has never been like always seamless because we're still going through a page of results, but I could hopefully, assuming it's up to date and accurate, be able to get instructions quicker. And the person could actually, like, let's say I needed to figure out how to set up, I see this on how to do PHP. I don't know how to, I don't know the beginning. I don't know how to start up an instance for PHP. I don't know, how do I do those things? I'd like to be able to code, and it seems fun, but the starting point is just too. And everybody wants to tell me about all these theories on these. I'm reading blogs on theories on coding and going. Can I just can I just have a starting point?
Hence the reason that I love Udemy. Like, because it makes a very clear cut. It gives me a starting point. And so then I learn and I get to move forward and be happy.
Oh, well,
Or actually, YouTube is great too. Because a lot of times this is actually where I've switched from using Google
mhm.
many times for my searches to actually using YouTube more than I use Google if I'm looking for information, because I can quickly tell whether it's going to be relevant to what I'm searching for or not,
Mhm.
and refine down based on what search returns I got with the first request to get to more and more relevant information.
Right. And I've been using YouTube so heavily that frequently I'm like, do I want to go to Google or YouTube? Hmm.
Exactly. I actually will usually start with YouTube because it's easier to pick out the information.
Um, and this is where, as much as we can talk about TikTok, um, where
I
it
don't do
takes,
TikTok.
uh, well, taking the ideas of TikTok. So I've gotten into a little bit, and I could see the appeal. I haven't picked it up in months, but I was like, oh wow, probably a couple months.
Well, I have particular reasons not to ever want to. If I ever get TikTok,
Hmm.
it will be on a phone that does nothing but TikTok with no contacts aside from TikTok.
Oh, all of our
There will
data
be
is
nothing on
being
that.
grabbed. There's all. I
No,
mean,
no. I mean, there's actually they do more than just what you usually do, which they do keystroke logging and a whole bunch of other things that it's bad news.
yeah.
And so if I ever do anything with TikTok, it will be on a burner phone that has no contacts and no connections to it aside from TikTok.
But the concepts and the advancement, the innovation that comes out of it is fantastic. Which is why the other platforms are starting to adopt it. Where you've got
The
YouTube
micro videos
Shorts.
of 15 seconds and things like that, where you're actually though dumbing people down. Our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter,
Which makes learning,
harder
which
and harder to do.
right. So we need. a web to adapt with us and our learning styles, which might be shorter and more abbreviated. The long 1500 word post for learning something, I'm not going to learn from as much because I'm
Well,
having to
actually, here's a fun fact. People have never learned as well from reading alone as they have from a combination of reading plus audio and visual. Our brains just are geared towards stories. And so when we have the audio and visual to help us, more parts of the brain get activated, which enables the memory to become stickier.
Yeah.
So if you combine stories plus audio and visual, you are more likely to remember the content, up to 90% of it, even 6 months after having viewed or.
Yeah. What's the last text ad that you remember?
I couldn't begin to tell you.
Right. Nobody has this answer because we don't remember text ads. They're like,
They're useful in the moment, but as soon as they're viewed, they're basically forgotten.
yeah. So like, there might be something you could. Oh, I think I saw. No, I don't. That's
Yeah. Well, and that's the whole point of having ads that have jingles with them and slogans that are easy to remember and catchphrases and things like that, is because our memories don't work on strict facts alone. We don't tend to cling to facts well. We don't tend to archive them well. That's because the memory, the brain's memory, is structured not by chronological order, but by relationship.
right.
So we remember things in relationship to other things. So if I give you numbers, say for instance, I toss out 8/15, 1925. And then I move on for 10 minutes, right? And then I come back and I ask you what that number was. You're not likely to remember it because it has no emotional connection for you, and it has no relevance to anything in your present day or past. It has no.
Oh, it's not
tangible
anchored to
relevance.
another memory or another thought. And so
Exactly.
accessing that Oh, that's right. I forgot about those. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Um,
accessing a set of numbers that has no tie to anything in particular is very difficult.
right.
But if I have something that I tie them to that helps you remember, like for instance, if you have a particular reason to remember August 17th, 1925, right, then you're going to have a much easier time recalling that I gave you the numbers 8/17/1925.
Is there an event that happened
No,
that day that you remember?
no, there's not. There's
Okay.
nothing that I know of.
Okay.
That's why I picked the date.
Okay.
It was like, because I knew there was nothing in particular that I happened to remember. Yeah, so the only thing famous was the only thing they basically, John Hawkes, an American writer, was born in Stamford, Connecticut.
And at the
I
time,
don't even
nobody
know
knew
who
who that
that
guy was.
is. Exactly. So,
Yeah.
there's nothing really significant that happened on that day that I know of.
Right.
So you can't tie it to a date that's meaningful to you, which is one trick you can do to remember numbers. If you can make them into an kind of like construct them so that they read like a date.
A date that shall live in infamy.
A date that shall not be remembered because it has nothing going for it.
Yeah, I think that's I think the attention span problem that we have, if you have media that starts adapting to that, can accelerate our learning processes. Because and I think there's no choice. We have to. There's a lot of it's not our attention span kind of does create a challenge but
Well, right now we've gone from having the attention span of guppies, and we're slowly getting there to the attention span of amoeba. I'm not sure. We're not evolving. We're devolving.
you know.
If the amoeba can beat us on a focus test, we have issues, sir.
Now we're denigrating amoebas, huh?
Well, it always comes down to denigrating another species. Okay, first it was guppies, now it's amoebas.
Yeah, that's screw you amoebas.
That's right. Darn you.
Powerpuff Girls, the amoeba boys, right? Anyways,
Any rate, but yeah, I
um,
mean, this is the issues that um, we need a certain amount of attention to be able to learn anything. That there's got to be a certain amount of attention span that we can allocate, because in order for us to learn something, we have to be able to connect it to something we already know, which means we have to have been able to pay attention enough to notice the pattern of connection.
so let me go into just a discussion that I've thought about this a lot, and then I stopped worrying about it once I came to this, which is I've talked to others that have like have this same concern. What career do I go into, or what path do I take? Because what areas of knowledge are going to be useless in the future, right? What I mean, I work on ads, and I think the abundance of ads is it's too high on the web, and I think there's especially targeted digital advertising, right? So I think it's already peaked, and and now there's a inertia waiting for some of that to fade. Not that ads are going to go away; ads are going to continue, but the
I don't
very
think ads need to continue in their current
in the
iteration.
current, right. And so that's been my career up to this point. And then so my thought is, okay, what direction am I going to take? I was talking to someone else, was like, well, you don't want to, like they were trying to tell their kid well, you don't want to go in this direction, or you don't want to go in that direction, because because that could be replaced. And what I came to is all of our skills are going to be replaced in one way or another.
Yeah,
The people who are going to do well are going to figure out ways that they can take their existing knowledge and convert and adapt their memories and those thoughts into a new skill set.
actually, here's the thing, Kevin, and this is why a few episodes ago, like back at the beginning, I was advocating entrepreneurship education
Hmm.
as the solution to our educational
Yeah,
challenges. And the reason for that is that entrepreneurship is an exercise in applied problem solving. You get paid to solve problems. That's how you get paid. That's how you develop a business. One of the things that I do know for a fact is that no matter how much AI we have, we cannot anticipate the problems that were going to crop up precisely because of the technology. So anybody who's trained in thinking about how to solve problems will always have work to do, because there will always be new problems introduced by AI that we did not anticipate and could not have anticipated until the time comes when they show up. So if instead of looking at problems as problems, you look at problems as opportunities, you will always have opportunities to succeed. You will always have new things to challenge you, and you'll always be able to grow. Where our problem comes in is that we've started many decades ago, people began moving away from education as being about how to find answers and solve problems to being about what career to choose. It's kind of, it's not the purpose of an education. An education's true purpose is to pass a toolbox on from one generation to the next, and everything in that toolbox is designed to help each generation learn to find the answers to their own questions about life, the universe, and their purpose in it as they work to solve problems.
right. Yeah, it's very
So
well said.
if
Sorry, I
we
say
take
right, like of
yeah,
course.
so if we take the approach of education is not about a career, it's about answering questions, finding solutions, overcoming challenges, then the answer, what career should I use with my education, becomes moot.
Well said. Like, yeah, that's had me wound up tight sometimes, going, oh, like how am I going to change and evolve? What do my skill sets, and do I stay too long focused on what I do? Um, but I see a lot of other things that are happening, that my skills, like I've gotten really adept at. God, and I can be tricked too, but like sifting through like fraud and defining how can you keep yourself more and more safe. I am not an expert. I'm just saying that this is like I've gotten some, people send me emails going, is this really from Facebook? They're threatening my page. And if you read through it, sometimes they're just hilarious once you get down to it. Um, Sometimes they're like, wow, that's preying on the uncertainty. Like some of this is like, oh, that's an old logo, and this and domain is wrong, bunch of stuff, right? So those are I think fraud, and being tricked is going to be people are going to need help protecting themselves from that. That's one.
Actually, this is where we need to be teaching philosophy, because philosophy's entire purpose is to get people asking, how do I know something is real? How do I distinguish between what is real and what is not?
Yeah.
Okay. We haven't been teaching our kids, or our generation certainly didn't have any philosophy classes.
No.
But it was part of the classical curriculum of my mother's generation and before that. It was definitely there, and then they took it out. But this is a mistake, because now we have a bunch of people who don't know how to tell what's true and what's not, what's real and what's not. And that's going to become even more important with the iterations of AI video, where you can, you can put somebody's face and voice, attach it to something that they never did and said. So how do you tell when it's the real person versus a fake?
Yeah, there's certain ways that being somewhat disconnected from the truth can also like be really creative and inventive.
Well, okay, creativity comes when you take a little bit of the truth and you ask yourself, what if? Right? You
Yeah.
start with the truth and you ask yourself, what if? What if this changed? What if that wasn't true? And you explore from there.
So
And it leads you down
limits,
all kinds of creative dimensions.
if you've got your concept of reality and now you're introduced with something that you don't believe is possible but you're convinced it's true, is also happening. The mind, some
You get
people will
some
go,
cognitive dissonance.
some people will look and go, that's too much for me, I don't get it. And some will go, I have to understand how that actually works. And where something that is impossible suddenly becomes possible, and the person could actually advance an idea. Not saying that we should completely promote it. I'm just saying that we
Well,
should.
lots of things are possible. Not all things are good to do.
Was it the guy who created? Was it FedEx or USPS? Not US.
I mean, as we learned with
UPS.
Jurassic Park, we spend a lot of time wondering if we can do something and not enough time asking if we should do it. Just
We, s-
because a thing is possible doesn't mean it should be done.
we spared no expense. um, but yeah, you're right. I mean, like we need to be watchful of things. We have to worry about our time, because I think our being so easily distracted, uh, more people wanting to take that time, becomes, I mean, how much productivity is lost in spam?
Hmm.
How much like I'm distracted over here. I if I That's not good for deep thinking on a single problem.
No, it's not. Actually, all the bells and whistles and stuff can be a serious problem.
Yeah.
It's important to turn off said bells and whistles every once in a while and get away from those things.
Yeah.
It's like in a casino, they don't want you to know what time it is. They
Oh
don't want you to
God.
think about time. They don't want you to hear anything except bells and whistles and constant lights and noise and distraction, so that you are not ever really cognizant of yourself, your situation, or your time spent.
You know, just I gotta remember this. There was a conference I helped put on, and State of Search, and and leading up to it, there's so many things going on, and I don't stop to think about it. But during the conference, I'm just complete like a blitz of attention focused solely on the conference. I can't think about work outside of that. Normally I have to check out from work. I have to force myself, but I'm like just focus on that. I came back and it didn't stick because it was only just a few days, but I had a very different mindset because I had taken myself out of the situation and now I was looking at things differently. And I wish I should really do that more often.
Actually, it is an important thing for people to do is to periodically just take a break from things, from doing anything. To periodically just be mindful of life as it is,
Yeah.
not as you're trying. As It's an interesting thing. I was watching a video by a rabbi, and he was talking about why they celebrate the Shabbat. The whole Friday sundown to Saturday sundown, and what its purpose really is. And he's like, if you don't stop periodically to just be in the moment, to appreciate all that has happened before and all that is currently in existence, what happens is that your life becomes this blur. There's no distinction. You're just moving from one achievement to the next achievement to the next achievement without any ability to really appreciate them. And so you really aren't living life. You're just moving through life. So, in taking a moment, a day, to just focus on being grateful for what's happened the past week, appreciating for what it is, appreciating the people around you for what they are, not asking them to change, not expecting them to change, not judging them for not being where you might want them to be, not trying to create them, not trying to shape them or form them, just appreciating them for where they are as they are without expectation of being greater or lesser. You come to find more peace in your life. You come to find that you're happier with life because you appreciate it more.
Yeah. You know,
And I know that for myself, I used to feel like I hadn't accomplished anything. It was like as soon as I accomplished one thing, I set a new milestone for myself and I was focused on that objective, and nothing else mattered except getting to that next thing. And I would tell myself, well, I can be happy when I get to that next thing. I'll be happy then. And of course, you would get to the next thing and you wouldn't be happy because you would see how much further you could go. And so you would set the goalpost for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And you're just an endless round of go, 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 go
hmm.
with no appreciation. And Randy at one point told me, he said, I wish sometimes you could just appreciate me for me without trying to make me into something else. So I wasn't just doing this to my own life, I was doing this to the people around me too. I couldn't appreciate them because I could always see where they could be and weren't.
Right.
So when I took a step back and said, I'm just going to take some time to appreciate what is, as it is, without asking it to change or be something else, then I started to feel more peaceful and more happy for myself. It was like I could suddenly see my accomplishments as accomplishments. I could suddenly see the people in my life as people and not projects to be modified or fixed.
Hold on, I've got neurons firing. Um, I, s- you've been you've been talking about people needing love,
Mhm,
and that value, right? Um,
mhm.
and so thinking about the appreciation of people. Um, when I go to a social media page, so if I, any kind of social media site, what I see is I see a friend. I might see their avatar, their profile image. Um, and if I go to their page, I can dig through some photos, but it's not a connection of me to them, right? It's just about them. When I go to when I'm looking at their page and scrolling through, I don't have any. There's not there's not comments, like my appreciation of like my basically how I would rate my last interaction. Attributes that I would ascribe to that event that had happened, right? And so you could have this wonderful time with this person, um, maybe over 6 months or several years, and then you start having some negative interactions, or you kind of drift, and all those start being lost because our attention span and our memory is shot, right? So when we look at them going, I just don't see it. But if we had those triggers that could go bam, and sometimes on the opposite, to avoid the person we've determined that is a toxic person, right? That is going to I need to remember that I need to avoid that person. These kinds of associations and memory triggers about the people, not that we don't want to make these public, and we don't want to I don't encourage creating negative associations about a person, but we do need to sometimes be mindful of for ourselves that going to certain people is just going to create a negative experience. It's not going to generate as much of the positive, but we as much on the positive side, and that's the part that I want to focus on. We need to remember those moments, and it kind of gets lost in the noise. Some very very strong, powerful, like, man, this is awesome. Maybe that was like 6 months ago, and like, what?
Mhm.
And now they start describing something, we don't even know what they're talking about, and then it's like, oh, yeah, because we don't have any memory triggers.
Mhm.
And this is lacking from the at least the social media platforms that I am
Mhm.
aware of, and it's not what we asked them to build in. But I think that would be invaluable, um,
Mhm.
to add in not just a context of a conversation, but my thoughts and feelings about this person, and how recent. Um,
Maybe built-in opportunities for appreciation.
Yeah, tag them with like emotional triggers.
Hmm.
Maybe there's a memory. What do you remember this about this person? Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
but it is very easy to overlook it and to get disconnected and to not appreciate, to lose track of why the relationship had meaning and value, and then to let the relationship drift. This is actually a human tendency, is over time our relationships can drift if we're not conscious about keeping them close.
right.
And sometimes the thing that you thought you knew about a person that was 20 years ago, they're no longer that person. They've moved on, just like you have. And you know, holding on to the memory of them from 20 years ago isn't always productive.
Yeah, that is. We've got it deeply ingrained, and this is really, like, as you know, like, breaking into the professional world. The way you're
Mhm.
treated is the way the person, like, they oftentimes where they get a static thought of those, and we're like, we're not that. Why are you acting that way towards me? I've come a long way, and now
Yeah,
I'm quite
exactly.
capable. It's
Right.
very unproductive behavior, and it's
Yeah, I'm
insulting to the
not the
person. It's
person
like,
that I
what?
was at the beginning of my career. I'm not the person I was when you met me, and you're still trying to pigeonhole me back there. And I know that I've grown. You don't know that I've grown. So it is kind of insulting. It's like, I'm not the kid that you met, when you first met me. I
Yeah,
have grown and advanced my skills, and I want to be taken seriously for where I'm at now, not held back to where I was then.
yeah, yeah, and that needs to be like, if you were doing a social media, let's say you were creating a small social media platform, being able to advance your own memory of a person's, like, advance, like, updating of skills would be tremendously helpful, because it's really hard to work with a person when you keep going, why are they giving me attitude? Because
Hmm.
I'm treating the way I've always treated them.
But
uh,
they're not the same person. Yeah,
uh
exactly. And that is part of the problem, is that this is another thing I've been learning, is about being aware of who a person is and stopping. We have a tendency to assume that the person that we're talking to is the same person they were when we met them. That is the tendency that we have. And this is in romantic relationships, this is in personal relationships, this is in professional relationships. We tend to freeze frame them at the moment that we met them.
Right.
And we don't allow them the same room for growth that we would like. It's one of the things that was happening to Randy in my relationship, which is what made me aware of it. I remember when he was first coming into the church, he wasn't going at the speed that I would have liked. I was in a hurry to get him in. And at one point in time, though, he was making very rapid changes in his development, faster than I could really keep up with. At one point in time, he said, you keep judging me as if I am the person I was a year ago. But I'm not there anymore. I'm in a different place. And I need you to let me be in the place that I'm at now and not rush me along to the next place, but just appreciate me where I'm at. And this is where I started to understand that in any relationship, you almost need to treat it like you would, like you're an Alzheimer's patient. And the person you went to bed with, especially if you're in a romantic relationship, the person you went to bed with is not the person you've woken up with. Because even though you didn't see it, they've had interactions in their dreams, they've had thoughts, they've had experiences that go beyond what you know. And so it's a process of, at the beginning of the day, you need to start rediscovering who they are and finding reasons to fall back in love with who they are today. Not who they were a year ago, who they were 6 months ago. They're a new person today, experiencing them today.
Yeah.
Without the judgment that is attached. When you look at them and you think, they've always done it this way. They're doing it for the same reasons, but they may not be. The behavior may be the same. The reasons for the behavior may be completely different.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So we don't give each other enough room for growth. We want room for growth, but we don't give each other room for growth.
Well, yeah, because you don't grow. It's me that's growing.
Exactly. Well, at the same time that we want room for growth, we also say, I didn't change, you changed. Right. It's like, no, we both changed.
Right.
We both developed. We both had different experiences. We both had different input, different feedback, different things that we've done, different choices that we've made. And these have caused us to grow in different directions. But that doesn't mean we can't build bridges to come back together.
Yeah, and then reinvent the relationship over time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And improve it. It doesn't have to die off. If it's productive to keep growing the relationship, you always can find bridges to come back together.
Well, I think I was watching this video like a couple months ago that said one of the problems that how do we say the word problem? Geez, I don't want to. But that's a negative connotation. But
no, not really. Problems. I would have said yes at age 23. True story. At age 23, I was almost ready to commit suicide because all I could see that was my life was an endless series of problems that I didn't know how to solve. And I just felt overwhelmed by that. And it just seemed like I would never find a place where I was enjoying life. It would always be problems, 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 problems. And so I was almost ready to commit suicide over that. In fact, the only thing that stopped me was the fact that I first thought about taking my own life. And then when I realized there would be nobody to take care of my son if I went, the next thought was, well, then I should take him with me. And that was what, whoa. Whoa. That was the moment that snapped me out of it. And I realized, no, I'm going to fight to make sure he has a better life. This is not how this is going down. Versus 3 years ago, when in November of 2019, or no, not November, fast forward 3 months. So it was March of 2019. And I wake up out of a dream going, I have problems. I was so excited about having problems, right? And the reason is because in the dream, God had shown me that every problem that I faced in the past that I'd learned how to solve was something I could package and sell for today to make money today. And every problem that I didn't know how to solve yet was money for tomorrow. I would never run out of problems, and therefore I'd never run out of opportunities to profit, and therefore there was reason to celebrate.
Yeah. That's strong.
And that's when I ended up writing the book, Turning Problems into Profits, because I wanted other people to know that no matter what problem they've got, it's good news. It's not bad news. It's good news that you've got problems. You're always going to have room to grow. You're always going to have a job available to do. You're always going to have space where you can belong and fit in and where you have value to contribute to society. That's never going to change.
And I think that's a I think that's a fantastic point, and I think if they're okay with that, that I think we should end on that because I can't
Yeah.
say it better, and I'm hearing a 2-year-old in the other room who would love my attention, and
Who
I'm
would
like,
love to
I
be
need to I
appreciated and
need to
valued.
appreciate, yeah,
Yes, who would love to be appreciated and valued and spent time with. Yes. And I totally support men in nurturing and nourishing their children. So yes, I'm going to say a-okay to that being the end.
all right, all right, thank you, love you, Brandy,
Love you
um,
too, and you have a
love you
great night,
guys,
Kevin.
all
Say
right,
hi to the family for me.
all right, will do.